All right, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, yeah, so we didn't do a Zoom on Tuesday. Excuse me. So we'll just go ahead and cover pretty much this entire week's price action. All right, so pretty much from last week, we were anticipating, right, the overall conversion of the DXY and leading to potentially a continuation over the next couple of weeks towards the downside. And obviously we could only assume the immediate continuation. Actually, let's go to the 1 day. All right, so we were anticipating the potential, right, continuation after the immediate POI, right? And I believe that was like just a general area from what I know, inefficiency and then POI. So yeah, so that actually did give us, right, an internal reaction. You can see the continuation BOS. That was a clear sign that this general area was valid and that it was justified. However, because that failed, right, that is technically a failed reaction. However, right now, right, I'm planning on zooming out just to pretty much see what is going on from an overall basis. Because that failed, I am now technically not bearish, right? Just because the reaction was given and it failed. As of right now, we are within this POI, right? And I cannot also neglect that there is a bearish reaction as well. However, because of momentum, because of the failed reaction, it just shows me that there really isn't much support to the downside to where now we can potentially anticipate, right, the continuation to the upside, because our structural range is still technically bullish from a swing standpoint. So as of right now, right, we have pointed out the daily POIs. Let me actually delete this stuff here. All right, that's fine. Where we are right now, we know that if, right, we are to be bullish, the failed reaction must occur, and now we are looking at a potential variant of structural disruption into the upside. And that is technically where structure is telling us that price will go as of right now. But the only thing that's really conflicting here, right, in comparison to supporting the swing bias, would be the minor and major intraday. Because of this reaction here, right, we've even taken internal structures and we have a ton of heavy momentum in that direction. So because of this single momentum here, we could technically negate, right, the overall move to the upside based on the failed reaction. And as of right now, I can't really say I'm certain with whichever direction, because from a swing standpoint, we are bullish, right? And there is obviously a potential POI to take us higher. However, because of the internal move with high momentum, I just don't really support or like to buy into high momentum from a bearish perspective. So because we have high bearish momentum, it's not really appealing for me, right, to take, you know, any type of long positions, especially when we're talking about major intraday. If we're talking about scalp, it's a completely different story. Just because we know the security of moves, right, is completely different based on whatever structural level you're looking into. So as of right now, I would more so lean to the bearish side only because of the immediate move, right? If the immediate move is now giving us, right, a big candle into the bullish direction, then I will convert back into a bullish sense. But just because of the immediate move, I'm really only going to assume that we are going to potentially come lower. And that's really the only thing I can conclude based on just what is going on right now. Back to EU. EU, we were anticipating, like we said, right, the continuation to the upside based on the failed reaction, potential unwillingness, right, and the order flow disruption shown here. However, same thing with DXY. The POI gave a reaction, and you can even excuse me, you can even kind of nitpick it with, you know, a smaller time frame wick here, right, where we have a reaction, but all that matters is that the reaction occurred, the continuation BOS occurred here based on the relative area of interest that we pointed out last week. So because of that, this whole general area is now technically a bearish POI, which is also in support of the overall swing direction. However, like we said with DXY, I don't really like how much momentum is being given right now, because if we go now down into the minor intraday, maybe even the scalp, right, there's already been, right, based on, right, the failed reaction to the downside, if we are to, actually I'll do this with the annotations, right, if we are to continue lower, right, we have to analyze the reactions that are given. Actually, let me do a straight line there. Right, so that, right, has been the solidification of the low, right, and into the high-low retracement. However, I don't like that this already occurred here. That means that we are now internally bullish, and there really is no sign of bearishness just yet. So it's the only thing I don't like is just the momentum and the failed reactions internally, right, that they don't really support any of the major intraday stances. So yeah, as you can see right now, I'm going to narrow this POI out, right? There is even still another POI up here, right? Maybe if we were to get a liquidity grab here or any type of move like that, then potentially we can see a bearish conversion. But just as of right now, the minor intraday and the scalp still looks pretty bullish in my opinion, and I think this could continue a bit higher. I don't see why this would convert just yet, right? Maybe if we reach the high and, like we said, give any type of liquidity grab or anything of such, that could potentially give us a bearish transition, right? So now coming into gold, this one is a bit of a tricky one. Right, I'm actually going to delete the drawings. That. Cool. So what I don't like about here is, like we said before, we are still technically bullish, right? And the main thing that is, that we are still mainly bearish, I'm sorry, only because we don't really see, right, any type of bullish reaction that has been showing us, that we're going to be bullish. All I see is two relative equal lows. I see relatively weak order flow based on the POI. And even if we have a strong reaction right now, I do still see us potentially coming down to take out liquidity. I don't see why we don't take this out before we potentially give a move into the upside. But it is starting to get pretty choppy, right? And that is really one of the only things that are standing out here, the inefficiency fill. And there is a candle here that we could potentially dissect, right? But just from a major intraday stance, this is really looking like it doesn't want to give us any type of sign of either bullishness or bearishness. Why? Because we know from a swing standpoint, right, we are bearish, right? We have the retracement, we have the continuation, right? And then we had the internal unwillingness, which did not fully become overall unwillingness because we didn't take out the major structure point, right? And then that led now to another push to the downside, and we're now negating, and now we're now leaving unwillingness based on the overall low, and we're not even taking out this. So it's kind of, in my opinion, no man's land. I don't see which direction this could go. There is really no clear direction, in my opinion, right? Outside of maybe seeing a transition, continuation to the downside, right? But because we've already shown signs of failure to the downside, this could easily be negated as well, just because I don't want to let, right, liquidity be what's influencing my bias, right? So just as of right now, if we were to talk raw direction, there really is no sign of which direction this wants to go. But yeah, let's go ahead and zoom out here. right? That does look pretty bullish. And that's the only reason why I want to say that I don't really want to let liquidity be what's influencing my bias, because at the end of the day, we are still technically from a macro perspective bullish, and we're looking at the continuation of the POI into the upside. And the cool thing is once we do break that major point, then now is when we have a really clear bias for the upside, because the swing will now cover or will now be in alignment with just the overall macro direction here. So yeah, as of right now, I'm just not really too sure on this one. But yeah, let's go ahead and look at DXYs here. Yeah, as you can see, this one I still kind of want to lean towards the downside, even though the internal is saying otherwise. But there's just really a lot of uncertainty going on right now. And then the last one, right, the US 30. I know that we had pointed out, right, our point of reference, and we had kind of explained why this was valid last week's Zoom, with potentially taking out liquidity, a POI, and then a potential internal conversion. And you could even see that as of right now, we have rejected, right, based on an internal liquidity grab. That wick is now being mitigated and now potentially giving us some downside movements. So I guess the next point of reference would definitely be here. I do want to see what happens here. And then after here is pretty much what's going to tell us whether or not we're going to create new lows, or if we're going to potentially convert into the upside, because that could still, we could still be facing, right, a potential liquidity grab here and going up into a bullish sense. But either way, the macro is still, in my opinion, showing us signs of bearishness just because of the structural disruption that we had talked about. So if we are to break here, then now you can even argue a bearish liquidity grab into the downside. So yeah, this looks like it's playing out relatively fine so far after our prediction, but this one, in my opinion, seems the most clear in terms of we will at least see price come back down here and see what can happen based on the two scenarios that I just covered. But yeah, gold uncertain. EU, I would still love to see this be bearish. It's just the internal momentum is kind of making me unsure. Same thing with DXY. We still want to be bearish, even though, right, the momentum to the upside, it has a failed reaction. But yeah, I think next week is probably going to be a very good week, right? Because we're really going to know by next week whether or not this is going to be low momentum, or if this is just structural disruption coming into play and we are still seeing more downside movement. But yeah, in my opinion, I would like to see more downside movement here. This one, more downside movement as well, just because of the failed reaction. And the internal things that are throwing us off are mainly minor intraday, not major intraday. So yeah, I guess with that being said, do you guys have any questions today? Are you being weird? I think we didn't cover this actually. 1 second. I don't think we covered this one. Yeah, I don't think we covered this one. Let me. Okay. I guess this one is pretty much the same with EU. The only thing that's different with this one, this is currently where we are right now, right? Even if we are to narrow it down here, the only way I could be bearish is if this is taken out. But I mean, it looks like it wants to be bearish, at least bare minimum down here. And then this is going to be what's going to dictate whether or not we're going to be bearish or bullish. Yeah, let's see this internally actually. Yeah, there's definitely a model here if you can see it. Definitely a model here, right? Liquidity grab, entry, invalidation or invalidation. I could see people potentially getting that reversal here. But yeah, this looks like it might still come down a little bit lower. In my opinion, I think that will still continue a little bit lower. But then once we reach here, I don't know whether or not we'll be bullish or bearish. Let's go back to H1. Yeah, I mean, that would be nice just because it supports the failed reaction, similar to what happened with the DXY and EU. And that would give us, right, a new low. And that's what, 300, 250, 250 pips away. Not too bad. But yeah, if we are to break this low now, in my opinion, then we're going to see very, very big move to the downside. If we break this low, I don't see us coming back for a deep retracement, just because this is a deep retracement playing out. And there has been signs of potentially weak order flow, just because we aren't creating new lows after the order flow. So if we are to make one here, then I see a small retracement and then a big move to the downside, if that is to occur, right? But these signs of weak order flow could also be signs as to why we react from here. But yeah, definitely going to be very interesting monthly closures here. And yeah, I mean, I could definitely see this also converting into a bullish sense. This one, not so sure. This one's still not so sure. And I mean, this one was a big engulfing. So like we said before, we could see some sort of reaction at that blue line. Does anybody have any questions? Anything they want to go over? Well, I'll sit here for a little bit. I mean, it's only been 18 minutes. If anybody has any questions? Something I observed with gold was it LG at M5, but it didn't make sense to buy that low. LG where? Exactly. LG where? I mean, I definitely see the transition here. Continuation BOS. This is technically still high into low. You could even say a little bit higher. Retracement here. But now once we have, okay, I see that. I definitely see why an LG here would make sense. The LG would definitely make sense here only because it shows potential internal unwillingness based on that. And that would be your invalidation. Let me see. Oh, you're referring to the overall lows. I thought you were talking about just M5. You're referring to this low. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, but that alone, in my opinion, is not enough to justify a trade. Like I said, even if this is added on here, this alone, like this here plus the continuation BOS that we just covered, that's not enough for a scenario. That's not enough to justify. That is not enough to justify. Why? Because it's only continuation BOS. High, if you want to use this high into low, either this high or this high, it's the same thing. This is still the retracement of that high. Yep. So that's why you can only justify it. It's only justified at here. Why? Because there is still another continuation BOS here. Right? So this is a continuation BOS as well. I personally still wouldn't buy here because the momentum, the order flow, everything internally is still bearish. So really the only way here, the continuation BOS, you could still argue that this is another continuation BOS. It could be high into low retracement continuation. So once that second one occurs, right, that's also order flow disruption because we have reaction 1, reaction 2, order flow disruption. And so here your invalidation would be at the low. So that's the only way I could justify it here would be with order flow disruption. Because this is still continuation BOS, continuation BOS. Right, and realistically, you could have even taken, if you're looking for scalp trades, there is still, right, the liquidity grab, entry, right, and then you could just take out or take some profit at the previous low. That itself is a scenario. That's a simple 1 to 2, 1 to 3, if that is what you're looking for. But like I said, the only way to justify a bullish scenario here is with order flow disruption, right, and the invalidation being here or here, depending how conservative you wish to be. Yeah, they definitely matter. Everything matters. But the thing is too, is let's say you do get this scenario here. I believe it was an M3. What I saw. Okay, let's say you're even being conservative and you're using the entire POI. Let's say that. Either way, you're technically still from major intraday, you're going very, very against the overall direction. So you should definitely be taking some off the table here. And then after that, you can really hold until here because there could be a reaction here and that could give us a downside move. That's why you saw a failed reaction here because the move was still bearish. But just as easy as we're converting into a bearish sense here, we can convert back. So I guess here would be another big TP, but you couldn't really assume this TP, right, based on the direction, right, as where we were right here. We couldn't really judge that this is going to be taken out. You see what I mean? So you have to be scaling out properly there. But yeah, any questions, concerns? If not, we can just go ahead and wrap this up soon. All right, I guess we can wrap it up here. Appreciate you guys for hopping on.